So I want you to think about the last time you were genuinely, just furiously offended by something.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a moment just this past week where you were boiling over with stress.
Oh, yeah, we've all had those moments recently, I'm sure.
Right. Go ahead and put yourself right back into that exact physical state for a second, because you know the feeling, the tightness in your chest, the racing thoughts, the hot face.
That incredibly heavy weight of feeling wronged or just totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. And it feels entirely real. And it feels like it's coming from the outside world. But what if the very core of that suffering, I mean, the heaviest part of that emotional baggage, isn't actually caused by the event itself? What if the absolute worst part of your misery is this invisible, entirely optional structure that's built by your own mind?
Well, we are so conditioned to point the finger outward, you know, like the automatic human response is to say, that coworker made me mad, or this traffic jam is ruining my morning.
Always someone else's fault.
Right. We treat psychological suffering as this physical object that the world throws at us, like something we just have no choice but to catch and carry around.
Which brings us perfectly to the sources we are jumping into today. When I saw we were doing a deep dive into a text by the renowned Thai Buddhist monk, Buddhadasa Bhikkhu.
Ah, yes. The 5 aggregates, the foundation of selfishness.
That's the one. And I have to admit, I fully expected mysticism. I was bracing for, cryptic parables and esoteric theories.
A lot of people do when they hear Buddhist texts.
Yeah. But I did not expect a text that reads like a modern clinical psychology manual. Our mission for this deep dive is to essentially deconstruct the very concept of you.
Which is quite the mission.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are going to explore how dismantling the exhausting burden of the ego is actually the ultimate practical guideline for living. It's essentially a blueprint for a better way of life and genuine mental freedom.
And the clinical nature of this text is really what makes it so striking. I mean, this isn't about retreating to a mountaintop to meditate away your personality.
Right. No shaving your head required here.
Exactly. The author is providing an immediate practical toolkit. He insists that to fix the suffering we experience in our messy everyday lives, we have to kind of look under the hood of human consciousness.
We have to answer a fundamental question, right? Like, what is a human being actually made of?
Precisely.
So let's try to locate the self then. If I ask you or anyone listening right now where you live, most people point to their head, right? Like somewhere behind the eyes.
Yeah, that little person driving the meat suit.
Exactly. But the text argues that what we think of as a solid, permanent me doesn't actually exist. Instead, we're just a collection of 5 constantly shifting, interacting components.
And the text calls these the 5 aggregates.
Right.
And the most crucial premise of this entire philosophy is that none of these 5 components, not a single one of them contains a permanent soul or an essential self.
We are completely devoid of a central I.
Which is a terrifying thought for some, but yeah, that's the claim.
Okay, well, let's play detective here. If I'm trying to find me in these 5 aggregates, let's start with the most obvious one, my physical body. The meat, the bones, the nervous system.
So the text categorizes that as the first aggregate, which is form. It's the purely physical matter.
Okay, form. Got it.
Yeah. Your body, the chair you're sitting on, the sound waves hitting your eardrum right now. It's the biological hardware. But clearly, hardware alone isn't a personality.
Right, because a body asleep or in a coma is still form, but the you isn't actively present in the same way.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's say I step out into the freezing cold. The physical temperature hitting my physical skin is form interacting with form, but I actually feel cold. So where does that happen?
That brings us to the second aggregate, which is raw sensation.
Raw sensation.
Right. And this is simply the immediate binary neurological reaction. It's not a complex emotion like nostalgia or jealousy.
It's just raw data.
Yes. It is the immediate flash of data. This stimulus is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The sudden shiver, the flinch from a hot stove.
Or like the comfort of a warm breeze.
Exactly. It is pure, unfiltered biological reaction.
Okay, but a flinch still isn't a personality.
Okay.
So the raw data comes in. What happens next?
Then the third aggregate kicks in, and that is perception.
Perception.
Yeah. This is the brain's labeling engine. It takes that raw sensation and frantically cross-references it with your memories and your past experiences to identify what is actually happening.
Okay.
So the raw sensation says unpleasant, perception slaps a label on it and says that is freezing wind. Or say you hear a loud noise. Perception instantly says that is a dog barking.
Okay, so let me track this. We have the physical hardware, the raw sensation, and the labeling engine. We are 3 steps deep into human consciousness, and everything so far is just automatic processing.
Totally automatic.
It's entirely robotic. I still haven't found the part that decides if I actually like the dog or if I want to run away from it.
Well, that complex reaction happens in the fourth aggregate, which is called mental formations.
Mental formations. Okay.
And this is where things get incredibly complicated. This is where we usually think our personality lives.
Interesting.
Because once perception labels the sound as dog, mental formations generate the emotional and intentional response. Like, if you were bitten by a dog as a kid, your mental formation might be intense fear and the urge to run.
But if you grew up with a golden retriever, your mental formation is joy and the urge to pet it.
Exactly. It's the cascade of thoughts, opinions, and complex emotions triggered by the first 3 steps.
So it's basically our conditioned programming running a script.
That's a great way to put it.
And what's the 5th one? The one that ties it all together.
The 5th aggregate is simply consciousness. And I should clarify, not in the mystical higher vibration sense.
Floating in space stuff.
Right, no floating. It just means basic awareness.
Yeah.
It is the fact of knowing that a sight has been seen, a thought has been thought, a feeling has been felt.
So it's like the connective tissue of awareness that links your internal senses to the external world. You know, as I was reading this breakdown and trying to wrap my head around it, because I kept visualizing a smartphone playing a video.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah. If we apply this framework, well, the physical screen and the microchips, that's the form, right?
Right. And the raw electrical current powering the device, that would be the sensation.
Exactly. Then the operating system recognizing the file type, deciding, oh, this is an MP4 video, that's the perception.
Which means the app actually reacting to your swipes, playing the video, adjusting the volume, that complex rendering is the mental formation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Wi-Fi signal connecting the whole thing to the network, making it live, is the consciousness.
That works perfectly.
And the crazy part is, if you crack the screen, the Wi-Fi doesn't care. They are entirely separate components.
Completely independent.
So if you take a screwdriver and lay all those parts out individually on a table, whereas the phone is, it doesn't exist.
Nowhere to be found.
There is no tiny magical soul inside the silicon that makes it a phone. It's just an illusion created by the seamless, high-speed interaction of its parts.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. And the text refers to this realization as understanding anatta, or non-self.
Anatta?
Yeah. Realizing that we are just biological smartphones. A temporary clustering of parts is the absolute highest teaching in Buddhism.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you really sit with it.
It is, but the illusion of the self is incredibly convincing, precisely because these 5 aggregates move at lightning speed. I mean, we don't see the processor in the screen. We just see the funny cat video.
Right. We don't see the 5 aggregates interacting. We just feel an uninterrupted, solid sense of I.
Exactly.
But this brings up a massive question for me. If we are just these biological gears spinning together, doing their automatic processing, why does the brain try so hard to convince us that there's a permanent me?
That's the big question.
And more importantly, why do we feel the need to own things? You know, my car, my opinion, my problem.
Well, we have to look at the evolutionary psychology behind it.
Yeah.
The text explains that this intense sense of self is a temporary illusion born from fundamental ignorance or avijja of how our minds actually work.
Combined with raw survival instinct, I imagine.
Exactly. Millions of years ago, the brain needed a central protagonist to navigate a dangerous world. It was biologically useful to attach a strong sense of mine to food, to shelter, to territory, because that kept the organism alive.
So the brain essentially invents an I to protect the physical form.
It does. When the aggregates interact with the stimulus, the mind mistakenly creates a concept to anchor the experience. It generates the feeling of, I'm experiencing this and this belongs to me.
But in the modern world, this survival mechanism goes into overdrive, right? And it backfires horribly.
Oh, absolutely. There is an example in the text that perfectly illustrates this malfunction. It's the chair analogy.
Oh, I love this part. Think about a little kid running through a living room, not looking where they're going, and they smash their knee into a heavy wooden chair.
We've all seen it happen.
The raw physical sensation is pain. But what does the kid inevitably do? They get furious, they cry, and they punch the chair back. They might even yell, "bad chair."
Right, and let's analyze the mechanics of why that kid hits the chair. The child's mind, driven by ignorance of the aggregates, cannot just accept the raw physical data of pain.
It needs a story.
The mind needs a narrative. So it projects a self onto the inanimate piece of wood. It treats the chair as an entity with malice and intentions, as if the wood actually chose to step into their path.
The child thinks, you hurt me, so I will hurt you.
Exactly.
It's completely absurd when you break it down. It's literally just wood. But the most unsettling part of reading this was the realization that we adults do the exact same thing every single day.
We really do.
We just use more sophisticated chairs, we bump into a rude cashier, a delayed flight, an unexpected tax bill, and we project a malicious self onto the situation.
Oh, yes.
We scream, why is the universe doing this to me?
Huh?
We take a completely natural arrangement of elements and events, and the brain turns it into a targeted, personal attack.
And the tragedy is, we do it to our own bodies and minds, too. The text gives an incredibly stark example of this. Imagine you are in the kitchen, slicing vegetables, and the knife slips and cuts your finger.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back here.
Go for it.
If I slip and sever a nerve while chopping onions, it is going to hurt no matter how enlightened I am or how much I understand the 5 aggregates. You can't just philosophize away a bleeding finger. Isn't this just gaslighting yourself into ignoring physical reality?
No. And that is the exact trap the text warns against. The physical pain, the severed nerve, is the second aggregate.
Raw sensation.
Yes, it is raw sensation. It is a biological alarm bell, and it is absolutely unavoidable. The philosophy does not ask you to pretend you aren't bleeding.
Well, okay.
But here is the critical mechanism of how suffering is manufactured. Because of our ingrained ignorance, the mind doesn't stop at the physical alarm bell.
The brain starts writing a script.
Immediately. Within milliseconds, a mental process called attachment grabs onto that raw pain and claims it. The mind starts screaming, my finger hurts! I'm so clumsy! How am I going to type tomorrow? I might lose my job if I can't finish that project. Why do bad things always happen to me?
It spirals out of control.
Right. The mental anguish, the exhausting psychological spiral that is entirely optional.
Wow. So the pain is mandatory, but the suffering is entirely manufactured.
Precisely. The suffering only occurs when attachment enters the picture. It takes a natural physical event metal interacting with flesh and turns it into a personal tragedy.
Because you aren't just experiencing a cut anymore.
No, your brain is experiencing an attack on your identity, your capability, your entire future. The heavy suffering comes from the word my, not from the physical cut itself.
That is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, it's the difference between the brain registering there is a sensation of pain in this localized area versus the brain declaring, I am suffering and my life is terrible.
Exactly.
The first is a biological fact. The second is an entirely fictional story my brain just decided to direct, star in, and watch on repeat.
And look at how often we write those stories, you know? We attach to our opinions, getting absolutely furious when someone disagrees with us online, as if they were literally attacking our physical bodies.
Guilty as charged.
We all are. Or we attach to our successes, puffing up our egos and saying, I am inherently better than others. All of this is the illusion of I and mine running wild.
Desperately trying to protect a self that doesn't fundamentally exist.
It is an incredibly exhausting way to live.
Which brings us to the ultimate point of this entire exploration. If the ego is an illusion that causes all this unnecessary misery, how do we translate this into a practical guideline for living?
A way of life, basically.
Exactly, a way of life. Because the goal here isn't just to be the smartest philosopher in the room. How does knowing I'm a biological smartphone actually change how I navigate my Tuesday morning?
That's the real test.
Right. Does taking this medicine, as the text calls it, mean I have to sell all my belongings, detach from my family, and become some kind of lifeless zombie who doesn't care about anything? Because I like my family, and I like my hobbies.
That is the most common fear people have when they encounter the concept of non-self. They think it means nihilism.
It sounds a bit like it at first glance.
It does. But the text addresses this beautifully. The goal is not to stop living or to stop loving or to abandon the world. You can still build a career, you can still fall in love, you can still own a nice house.
So it changes then.
The shift is entirely in the internal mechanism of how you relate to those things. You engage with the world using wisdom instead of blind, desperate attachment.
There's a fantastic analogy often used in this space about holding a glass.
Oh, I love the glass analogy.
You can buy a beautiful glass, you can drink from it, you can appreciate how the light hits it,
Yeah.
but you don't squeeze it so hard in your fist that it shatters and cuts your hand.
Yes.
The text talks about living in the world without letting things bite you. You don't let the glass bite you by convincing yourself that this glass is permanently yours and that your baseline happiness depends on it never breaking.
Because its fundamental nature is fragile. Eventually, it will break. When you live with an understanding of the aggregates, you align yourself with the changing nature of reality. When the glass inevitably breaks, your perception registers the event, but your mental formations don't spiral into despair.
You simply say, the glass is broken.
Instead of falling apart and screaming, "My favorite thing is destroyed, my day is ruined," you still clean up the glass. You still buy a new one, but you do it without the heavy, dragging weight of suffering.
And if we can do that with a glass, imagine doing it with people. This brings us to the poems at the end of the text. They completely shifted my perspective.
They are incredibly powerful.
They really serve as this incredible empathy blueprint for how we treat other human beings.
It's fascinating how deconstructing your own ego immediately reconstructs how you view everyone else. The poems act as a stark reminder. Every single person you interact with is composed of the exact same 5 aggregates.
The person who aggressively cut you off in traffic, the boss who unfairly criticized you, the politician you despise.
They're all trapped in the exact same illusion of a permanent ego.
The text refers to them as friends in birth, aging, sickness, and death. When you truly internalize this, it changes the fundamental mechanics of an argument.
How so?
Well, when someone is yelling at you, you realize they aren't some evil monster intentionally trying to destroy you. They are just a biological system currently overwhelmed by the illusion of their own ego.
Right. Their raw sensations are flaring, their perception is feeding them a threat narrative, and their mental formations are reacting with blind attachment.
Exactly. It strips away the personal offense. You stop seeing a malicious self attacking yourself, and instead, you just see suffering happening in real time.
It's almost impossible to stay furious at someone when you view them through that lens.
It really is.
The hostility just naturally dissolves into radical empathy. You realize they're caught in the exact same psychological trap that you are.
I really want you, the listener, to think about how this completely flips the modern self-help industry on its head. If you walk into a bookstore right now, the shelves are groaning under the weight of books telling you to build up your self-esteem.
Protect your identity.
Find your true self. Be an alpha. We are constantly force-fed the idea that the solution to our anxiety is to fortify the ego, to build thicker walls around the eye.
But the ultimate life hack presented in this ancient text is the exact opposite direction.
It is a brilliant paradox. By dismantling the self, by actively letting go of that heavy, exhausting armor of the ego, you do not become weak or defenseless.
You actually become lighter.
You become kinder, and you become remarkably resilient. Because if there is less of you to protect, there is less of you to be offended. There is a smaller target for the unpredictable nature of the world to hit.
Oh, so true.
So to pull all these threads together, we started by looking at how our brains automatically hijack natural events and turn them into personalized tragedies.
We cracked open the illusion of the ego and found that we aren't a solid, permanent entity, but just a biological process, a real-time interaction of physical form, raw sensation, labeling, mental reactions, and basic awareness.
And we explored the mechanism of how ignorance weaponizes those parts, how the brain's outdated survival instinct grabs onto raw data and claims it as mine,
creating massive psychological suffering over unavoidable physical pain.
or leading us to punch the proverbial chairs of life.
Exactly.
But the ultimate takeaway is the practical application, the way of life. By recognizing these aggregates for what they are, impermanent and impersonal, we can still engage fully with life, but without letting the world sink its teeth into us.
We drop the heavy armor of the ego.
And in doing so, we unlock a shortcut to radical empathy and genuine mental peace.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final puzzle to sit with. And it draws directly from the core mechanics of the text.
Ooh, all right, lay it on us.
We've established that the feeling of this ego we spend all day fiercely defending, is actually just a mental formation. It is the 4th aggregate.
Right.
And the rule of all aggregates is that they are impermanent, which means the feeling of you isn't always there.
Wait, what? Are you saying we don't continuously feel like ourselves?
Not at all. The feeling of I only flares up when a specific sensory reaction happens and attachment grabs hold of it.
Wow.
It spikes when you get cut off in traffic and feel insulted. It spikes when you receive a compliment and feel a rush of pride. The ego has to be constantly triggered into existence.
It's an active process.
Yes, but in moments of deep focus, when you are completely absorbed in reading a book or watching a sunset or playing an instrument, the I vanishes completely. There is just the action.
That is a wild concept to try and observe in real time. catching the ghost in the machine as it appears and disappears.
Exactly. So tomorrow, try to catch yourself in the act. When you feel a strong, sudden emotion flare up, anger, jealousy, intense pride, pause for just 1 second and ask yourself, did a permanent me just get angry? Or did a temporary feeling just pass through the biological system?
Because if you look closely enough
and realize that the solid, permanent you isn't always present who is listening to this right now.